So I want to talk about this topic that I've been looking into for the past few days. This is
Okay.
the question that I'm trying to look into is why and how do nation states exist? I mean, nations in generally, the way we know it. Countries. Why do they exist and how do they maintain and maintain themselves? So I'll start from the beginning. But before it, I'll just tell you the motivations behind why I'm trying to ask this. Because nations are very big concepts. Because in a nation, there could be millions or even billions of people. And one person, there's a very high chance that one person from one corner of the country will never meet some other person from the other corner of the country. But somehow they still maintain this sort of connection and togetherness among themselves. How does this persist? And how does those things happen? So those are the kind of questions that came into my mind. And it's still an ongoing process. I'm just giving my update here. I haven't found anything yet. Yeah, it's an ongoing process. So I'm just giving you my update about what I have figured out so far. And I'm going to start from the beginning. I think you can see this screen. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning, from the biological perspective, and then I'll come back to the social perspective. But this is one of those topics where both biology and social science will is going to overlap, and which is what I always thought. The things are actually just they definitely overlap. Those divisions are just made by humans to make things easier, but at the end of the day, everything is connected. So at the individual level, we have broadly two kinds of organisms in this world. There are social organisms or there are solitary organisms. And coincidentally, I talked about this thing about 7 years ago in one of my videos that I made, almost exactly 7 years ago. Yeah. So there are social animals and there are solitary animals. And those are mostly biological traits. It's not about personal preferences. Of course, definitely human level, there are personal preferences. Like some people like to stay in groups, some people prefer to spend more time alone. But even then, pe- even those people who want to stay alone, they cannot completely stay alone. They definitely need people because it is a biological trait. You can't go against a biological trait for the most part. Okay, so at the biological level, if you look at it, there are several factors that play a role into how and why a organism could be either a social animal or a solitary animal. So some factors like physical capabilities of the organism and the environment or the ecosystem in which that organism lives in. These are, I think, two of the most important factors that play a role. Of course, there are more than other more factors that plays a role, but I think these are the two that could be highlighted. For example, there are animals like tigers. Tigers are solitary animals. And let me look at a few others. Tigers, and then the other one is bear. Bears are also solitary animals. So some of the reasons why they could be solitary are that first of all, they are like alpha predators. They do not need to stay in groups to protect themselves from someone else. Nobody's going to hunt them, so they do not need them. They don't have the necessity for that. And so that's the physical characteristic. On the other hand, they live in certain, but that's not the only reason, because on the other hand, we have lions. Lions are almost as big as tigers. In fact, tigers are actually bigger than lions on average, but lions are almost as big. Even and they are also alpha predators. Nobody's going to hunt them, but they live in. They are more social organisms. That they live in small communities. It's that's because it's about the environment as well. Because tigers and lions they live in different environments, which requires different kind of adaptability uh, to survive. Tigers are mostly stealth hunters. They hunt in stealth mode. That's probably because the environment in which their prey lives, being stealthy is more preferable, and that's why being alone helps you to be in stealth mode. So those are the kind of factors that play a role whether you are a social animal or a solitary animal, biologically speaking. So that was an example of solitary animals. But since we're talking about humans, humans are biologically social animals because in the wild, humans are not the alpha predators, at least not without the weapons or the things that we have right now. But if you just put a human out in the wild without any weapons, they are not the alpha predators there. So, from a survival point of view, it makes sense that people live in communities. It helps them to gather their, like, for security, to not being hunted by other animals, to collaborate together and to hunt food and play different roles and so on. Yes, another thing that I forgot that plays a role in this is uh, the time it takes for a child to grow up and be independent in some sort. For humans, when a child is born, it is quite they're very incapable. They're very vulnerable, and that's one of the reasons why I also saw that elephants, even they're the biggest land animal, nobody can hunt them. They're also social animals. It's not because that they want protection, but mostly since their children take a lot of time to grow up. Most probably that's why they are social animals, and that's also probably why humans are. So it's natural that for humans, instead of being individuals, they will try to form groups and then form tribes. Now, there's an interesting thing about tribes. Most tribes within within human history have been within 150 to 200 in number. They were not thousands or tens of thousands initially for most of human history. So that's the reason behind this was one of the explanation given was by this scientist named Robin Dunbar. He gave this number 150. That's the number of people that a human can maintain like stable relationships with. Only 150 people, like stable, proper relationships. Beyond this, the humans are not capable of doing this naturally. And the reasons he said is that it's because of the neocortex of the human brain. So basically, again, it comes down to biology. So even though we are the most intelligent creature on this planet, even the human brain has limitations in certain regards. And in terms of forming stable relationships, 150 is the number that he came up with. Beyond this, it becomes harder for people to maintain real social relationships and to know people with like properly. Okay. Some points to those. Okay. So okay. Now if we go beyond 150 numbers, it becomes difficult for people to have trustworthy relationships. You might have seen like when you come to a new place, when you go to a new place, you meet new people, and on the surface they look very friendly, okay, but you can never be sure what their true intentions are. That's because you do not know who they are. But on the other hand, if you spend time with people, if you have spent time with people for a long time, especially from the childhood, like I could say that most of the people I know from school, even if I meet them now, 10 or 12 years later, I can still know what kind of persons they are. And for the most part, people do not change fundamentally. Okay, so they might have put on a new persona in this 10, 12 years, but deep inside, I know them better than their current colleagues, wherever they are working now. They might be, right now, they might be close friends, but I think I know them better and even they know me better about what my true personality is. And why that's important is because the whole point of survival is not to get scammed and be killed. And there's a whole thing about the world is when you go to new places, new areas, you never know how those people could do to you. They could rob you, they could kill you. At least, okay, in this current the way society is right now, it is a bit more difficult, but the more further into the past we go, the more wild the world was. People will take advantage of you any chance that they get. So it's very, very important for you to have really true connection and knowledge about the person. And because, as I mentioned, that it is not possible for humans to have those beyond 150. So in general, 150 to 200, people never got bigger than those things. So that is why tribes remained at 150. But as you could see right now, we have things like nations, like India is the most populous country in the world, and we are Indians, so we are part of this biggest tribe, so as to say, of 1 billion people. So how did this come? How did this happen? So there are two things that I was interested in. Is that why did this number increase and how did this happen? And I have gone through, I have posted this question into multiple subreddits and I got tons and tons of resources. I have to go through them to know this into more details, the finer details of it. But the big picture is very clear. Like you can get the idea about the big picture. It's very simple, like because the it's the same reason why people went from individuals to tribes, because it offers better opportunity. And I read Yuval Noah Harari's book maybe a few years ago, and one of the things he mentions is that one of the most unique capabilities of humans that makes humans much better than the other animals is humans' ability to work in groups. Obviously, other animals, they're social animals, but the level of communication and yes, the ability to work together towards a shared project is no other animal has that level of capacity because people like there could be if for a single company there could be people all around the planet but they're working towards the same goal because we have this ability to communicate and to work towards a shared goal. And the bigger the number, the better it is. So the whole point of having larger and larger tribes could be the reason could be economic. That if there are more people working towards the same goal, the quality of life, again, the quality of material life would be better as compared to smaller tribes. Like for example, you could still see like there are smaller tribes, the primitive tribes still around the world. They still live like from 100,000 years ago. And you can compare their lives and our lives from a material perspective. I probably think psychologically they are living much more peaceful lives than someone living in New York or somewhere else. But materially, We are like thousands of years ahead of them. And that's because they are just hundreds of people, whereas this is a whole interconnected global community. So the main reason is economic. I would say that is what my takeaway is. But if I go through the resources, I might find some other reasons as well. But that is my takeaway so far. So that's the why part answered. Now, how? I think that's also the most, that's an interesting thing because now there is also, I would say, some ambiguity about this thing. Because on the one hand, it is good, and also on the other hand, there are certain negatives of it as well. Good from a social perspective and bad from an individual perspective. That's what I can say. Because you have to lose a lot of your individuality and uniqueness in order to be a part of this thing. That is what my big picture takeaway is. So, I'll just briefly tell this, then I'll ask you something about your opinion. So, so now that uh, for larger groups, now that the people do not know each other personally, how do you maintain this sense of oneness, uniqueness, unity among these people? That's how this led to the creation of shared symbols. Like a country has flags, it has it has national anthems. Those are national symbols, and they are shared cultures. Like we have national holidays, we have public figures like national figures. In India, we have Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, and those kind of people. Then we have institutes, schools, governments, armies. I think school is by far the most important part here. And in fact, the public school system that was created, the whole purpose of the public school system was to instill this sense of national unity. Education was the secondary part here. The primary part was to install a sense of unity among all these nations. So that's the most unique thing about the school, because within a national boundary, the students learn a similar thing, a similar perspective about the thing, which is different from a people from the schools of a different country, and especially subjects like subjects from the social sciences. Because take any war, suppose I just remembered like there's this India-Pakistan war. So this the way it's being taught in Indian schools is different from the way it's taught in Pakistani schools. Because it's being told from our perspective in Indian schools. Maybe it's being told in a different perspective from their schools. So, and also since BJP came into power, the way they've changed the syllabuses and so on and so forth to tell the story from a different perspective. It all tells the importance of such kind of institutions to maintain this sense of oneness. So there are a lot of institutions and rituals and symbols being used and utilized to maintain this sense of unity among the members of a nation. So, what do you have to say on this thing?
So, so like, is this so far? Is this all your understanding of the nation state?
Yes, so far, I mean, in a nutshell, this is what I can say that this is how I understand about it.
So, yeah, I've not thought of this topic before, so I don't have a lot of opinions of it now. But let's see. I think one aspect that I don't see here is maybe you mentioned it, but it's mentioned in a different way about language. So why or how come people that are part of a tribe or a nation today most often have a common language? That is how they become one nation, or like that is one of the identity of a nation. is by the language they speak. Although today we have few nations where there are a lot of intermingling of different cultures, like the US and other such states or countries. But originally, like if you are Japan, you are speaking Japanese. If you are China, Chinese, Mandarin, whatever. If you're to Denmark, I don't know what this what's the language of Denmark.
Danish.
Danish. Yeah. So like each country has a language. So and in Europe itself, suppose like so many and India, because I feel like they're so much similar in this regard. There are lots of countries in a very small area, and similar to us, lots of states in a very small area, but all speaking different languages and different, somewhat different cultures. So I don't know what my point exactly here is. Like, I think language is a part of the. How come there are different languages in this social tribe? Is what
Yes,
maybe I'm trying to say.
yes. You have mentioned this pointed out a very important thing about language because one of the I posted this question in about 5 to 6 subreddits, and one person and his book that was recommended the most was Imagine Communities by Benedict Anderson. And even Benedict Anderson told that a language did play important role in the formation of nations because it brought together people and so on. But I haven't gone into that in details. But you are that's and language definitely did play important part in formation of nations because it helps spread the ideas and those kind of things. But again, I don't know much about this. Again, also, what is your question again? Like, what? Why
It's
are
not
so many
exactly a
languages
question, just
exist? Okay,
yeah.
observation.
So like it's a kind of an observation, like
Yes,
how what led to the world having this many languages.
yes, yeah. That is an interesting question because I mean there are a lot of ways. I don't know how it relates to nation states, but also there's an important, interesting question. But because there in the ancient times there were like certain languages, and then a lot of other languages were derived from that language. It changes a
Mm.
lot. Like for example, in Europe, Spanish, Italian, and French are all derived from Latin, and they are quite similar. How do I know that? First of all, I watch a lot of football, and that's why. And these are the very three popular countries in which football is played. And also, I use Duolingo to learn those languages. And there are a lot of similarities between Spanish and Italian. And then I found out, okay, it is very similar. It's almost like in India, it could be like Assamese and Bengali or like Gujarati and Hindi. Because if you know Hindi, then you can make out Gujarati. You can also understand a bit of Marathi and mostly Bhojpuri and everything. So those are very, again, Bhojpuri, Marathi, those are not Hindi. Gujarati is not Hindi, but it originated from Sanskrit. So there is definitely uh, some similarities. If you know one language, you can make out others. But then some other languages, like languages within the South India, are very, very different. So that the origin tree is quite different. Like it's almost like a species in from a biological perspective. How the if you can look at the roots of those things from one like people we always say that monkeys and human descended from monkeys, which is not actually true. Like but monkeys and humans did have a common ancestor, and we are different variations of that common ancestor. So languages are also like that, like they are variations of a common ancestor.
So yeah, here my doubt or like my point is that I assume that when time goes on,
Yes.
things become similar. For example, let's say fashion.
Okay.
There was a time when most likely every different nation had a different sense of style or fashion. So if
Okay.
you look at any Chinese history, there was a particular way they would dress. Koreans would dress certain way, Japanese, then Indians had a certain traditional dress. Then all the other nations would also have that.
Okay.
Today, everyone has merged to a common Western style most of the time.
Yes.
Then why, as time went on, instead of languages merging, it has expanded. For example, we are saying that Gujarati, Marathi, all of them are having a same source as their
Yes.
the source.
Yes.
Why then diverge instead of all following the same the roots? So Latin was previous to Italian, Spanish, France.
Yes. Yes.
So as time went on, why did they diverge instead of all absorbing that common language? What led to the creation of three different but similar language from the same source?
Let me see if I can. First of all, I think one of the reasons that could be is related to communications. First of all, I think it is bound to happen that once people, if there are no communications, which there wasn't until very recently, so language will, by default, I would say it will have its variations. Like within the same language itself, the accents or the dialects change. Even if you look at Assamese language, they're different
Mm.
from the eastern and the western side. The dialects are different. That's because I think it's a natural tendency for things to be a little bit different. And furthermore, these changes become more apparent if there is less communication between those groups. And that's why I think from Latin it diverged into Italian, Spanish, and French because there was very less communication, and so that little by little the variations kept changing on and on and on, and that is how it happened. In fact, biologically, species speciation also takes place. At least that is the hypothesis. That speciation also takes place in that manner itself. But now that you talked about fashion, in that way, language is also because in some way Western culture has dominated the world. So English is spoken, I think, is the most spoken language in the world. So an Indian can speak English, but hardly any Western or hardly anyone from outside India can speak Hindi or any other Indian language. So that's one thing. So the same goes for traditional clothes, the clothes as well, or fashion. Western fashion has dominated here. So in that way, language has also converts in the sense that most people speak the same language as their first. I don't say what is it the first language or it's not the first language,
Second,
but as their second language. So which I think so for most of human history, English, most people didn't speak English. But now since one culture is dominating, so their language, their way of dressing and so on, everything. And that's the least of the things, language and dressing. The culture has also taken over. Like in India, the way people live in India, the way people speak, the language that they, not just the English language, the way they mention themselves and so on. People, I don't know where did I read or watch this, like that this whole culture of eating out and those things. Those Indians never did that. People stayed at home, and if there was some occasion, people get together, have food, like people going out and eating in restaurants. unless they are traveling and they have to. That was the reason, not for like, okay, let's eat outside today. That's a Western thing. But Indians are doing this. So the domination of culture is also one thing that is always there. So in that way, language has also English is also there. Has been dominant has become a dominant language. Yeah, but from the other way, languages are also diverse because of this lack of communication. I don't think. Yeah, but maybe yes, I don't know how maybe Gujarati and Marathi might merge again. I don't think so. But yeah, that's. But then again, language is also changing. Like for example, English. Like what is this generation called? Gen Alpha or something? Maybe. And there are a lot. I looked into a few memes about Gen Alpha English, and yes, it's different. Have you heard? Have you looked into those kind of videos? Gen Alpha English.
Maybe aware of keywords in there. Doesn't know.
Yeah. So it's different. So you and I might find this. If I look at this, you and I might find this funny. But in other words, we are old. We are getting old. That's the thing. Like I think that's the denial thing that I have about me. Like, I'm not old. I'm still young. But I think when a 15-year-old or 12-year-old looks at us, they look at us
Yeah,
in the
for
same
them, we
way
are
when,
just uncles here. Yeah.
yes, we are uncles. Yes. But I still think like, no, I'm the younger generation. I look at like 50 years old and they're uncles. I'm the younger generation. But they look at us in the same way. Like we are the uncles, they are the younger generation. And I think that's the true thing. We are in denial. We are the actual, no, we are one level of uncle here. And I think I'm trying to be objective here because you can be the younger generation as long as there is no new culture being formed. But I can say that there is a new culture that is being formed because I've been here for 30 years, that which means that there is a new culture there. People I can see visually as well as abstractly. Like visually, if you look at people like late teenagers or early 20s, the kind of outfits that they wear, the hairstyles and everything, it has changed from the way when I was a teenager. And at least now I think that they look so weird. And I think, okay, that is how our teachers
Mhm.
felt when we did those hairstyles and wear those clothes. Now I think like I think like I'm not old-fashioned, but I would never dress like those people. I think no, I'll never have those kind of haircuts. I'll never wear those clothes. And then I realized, okay, this is how time changes. This is how we become this thing. And that is how, in a way, culture changes through time also. But again, coming back to nation states, in some way, I think so this too might play a part. But again, but at the end of the day, this discussion is an open-ended discussion. This is a level two discussion, which I have told earlier. So I'm not trying to make any point or anything here. So it is going to be open-ended here.
And so regarding the number 150,
Yes.
how is it uh, like uh, scientifically derived number, or what is the source of number 150?
Yes, this is a scientifically derived number as far as I know, because it was derived by a scientist called Robin Dunbar, and he did quite a lot of research. And let me see if I can share this one. We have only 5 minutes left, but sure. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is well, British anthropologist Robin Dunbar. So um, most probably he definitely did, some work. If I Google this, I don't know if there are any research papers into it. So as I so as you can see, there are people who have written research papers on these things. So it is more or less a scientific number. It's not someone just made it up and those kind of things. So there is some science behind it for sure.
So yeah, and even although they like the nature of the nation has changed, I think this still holds true. Like as from an individual point of view, no one is having actual close relations with more than 150 people.
Yes, that is true.
So even though we are on paper one country with 1.4 billion people, each
Yeah.
individual has a tribe of less than one.
Yes.
But the transparency among different tribes has increased, and the communication amongst tribes has increased. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
the sense of
just
identity is still
the
there.
sense of, so yeah, it's still with that few number of people.
And that is why I said in the beginning that there are these trade-offs like between individuality and this thing. As I said, like economically, it makes sense. Like if we lived in small communities, that the technological advancement that humans have made would probably never would have happened. But at the same time, as I've said, like this is a vast topic. I can like be a specialist on this topic and spend my people have spent their careers there. So we can hardly talk about anything in 40 minutes. But what I'm trying to say here is that uh, everything that happens in everyday news, like fighting among groups of people, politicians, like inciting like religious or communal violence, those are all specific tactics to at one level keep the divide and also at some other level to keep this cohesion of this sense of unity. Because that is why like whenever some why do people use this anti-nation term? Like if something if they do not like an opinion, they brand them as anti-national and those kind of things to stigmatize them, like and those kind of things. I don't have a lot of my ideas are not coherent here. So as I keep working on this, I might get better at understanding those things and expressing those things. So most of them have to be, as I've said, this sense of identity has to be artificially enforced time and time again. That is why those kind of things like you cannot burn the national flag on those kind of things. You have to stand up when there's a national anthem. This obedience has to be uh, trained like a dog into human beings. Like you have to be obedient there so that this identity is maintained. So you lose those kind of individuality in this sense. And okay, less than 1 minute left. So is there anything else do you have to say?
Mm.
Okay, so I think even I don't have, at least not for today, I think enough. I think there are endless things
Mhm.
to say about this thing. So maybe in the future something else I'll bring up. But for now, I think that's it. Okay, I can stop sharing now.